StreamYard. Okay, we're live. Hi, this is William Ramsey. Welcome to William Ramsey Investigates. On today's show, I have two very special guests. One is a returning guest. One is the first time I've talked to her. The returning guest name is John Hamer, and I've done 4 interviews with him in the past. I will put links to each one of those interviews in the show notes for this interview. We're going to talk about a book they published together. It's John Hamer and Shannon Rowan, published this year, 2022, in April, titled Welcome to the Masquerade, Prelude to the Coming Reset. Very important book, great information. I learned a lot. I thought I knew kind of a lot about this whole COVID situation, but there's a lot more to learn. But John and I go back. Some of my most listened to shows are John's shows. 2 of the books that were listened to most that we talked about are the falsification of science, our distorted reality, and then the falsification of history. We also did a show on a famous UK crime case about the Soham child murders, and then talked about another book having to do with JFK assassination titled JFK, A Very British Coup. And John's Hamer's website is falsificationofhistory.co.uk. And these old shows have a real listing of all the books that he's written in his longer biography. So I will just reference you to some of those earlier shows, and you can go through and see all his books, many of which are bestsellers in the UK. So UK Amazon, I think Falsification of Science has like 600 5-star reviews. And then Shannon Rowan joined John, and they can talk about how they kind of synced up to write this book. But Shannon Rowan, her website is wifirefugee.com, and she's written some other books, and so I'm delighted to have both of them. So John Hamer, Shannon Rowan, welcome to the show.
Yeah, thanks, William. It's good to be back. Very kind of you to have us back on again.
Yes, excellent. Thank you, William. It's great to be on. I really appreciate you having me on. So
awesome. Well, so maybe you guys can kind of talk about how you linked up to write this book and the background, and then everything you did to research that. Does one of you like to start with that?
Go ahead, Shannon. You do that.
Okay, sure. So yeah, I actually contacted John, interestingly, after I heard one of his Titanic YouTube talks. And it's kind of a long story about how I even found out about that. But I then bought Falsification of History. This would have been in, was it early 2019, I think. And then, so I contacted him with email, not really expecting to hear back. He got back, and we kind of, the conversation just unfolded from there. We had a lot to share with each other. And then he found out about my issues dealing with what they call like electrohypersensitivity, which is really a microwave injury, which caused me to have to, move several times across country to get away from these smart grids and cell tower, wireless networks, in order to recover my health and, to not be tormented by it 24/7. So John hadn't heard about this, something new to him. And so he thought we might do well to collaborate on a book together. I have a background in writing and journalism, and also photojournalism. So, so I hadn't been doing that for some years, but I got interested in, what he had just, things that he opened my eyes to, and then I was opening his eyes to some other things. So we started a book actually before the pandemic, I'll call it, which we were well into, more on like the EMF topics, but also transhumanism. And then this whole, COVID thing happened, and we thought we got to put that on hold and refocus, because this was more, urgent to uncover what was going on behind this. We wrote an article together on John's website in April 2020 about it. And then I wrote one, for another publication online. And I also started work on my own book about, which I actually had also started in 2019, about, my experience with the wireless radiation and that of others, and sort of the science behind that and the politics. And that is called Wi-Fi Refugee. And the website, as you said, is wifirefugee.com. However, just want to point out there's a hyphen between Wi-Fi and refugee. Okay. So, and that's basically it. Yeah, we just start collaborating. We met up once he came out here, and I'm now in California, to meet with me. And in terms of research, we divided up chapters, who's going to, focus on what, and, kept in touch with each other. It could be daunting at times being long distance and having to do a lot by email. We also have a lot of Skype chats and that kind of thing. So
yeah, the biggest problem, Shannon, though, is the small window that we have to speak, isn't it? Because there's an 8-hour time difference, and so it's very limiting.
Yes.
Right. So, but you guys put it together. I mean, it's a thoroughly researched book, 12 chapters. I mean, at what point did you realize that what was going on with this whole COVID event was there was a lot more to the story?
Well, speaking for myself, almost immediately it happened. I mean, I knew that there was something not right, very much straight away. When we were hearing all the nonsense that was emanating from Wuhan about these people dropping dead in the streets and piles of bodies and things like that, I just thought, come on, you can't be serious. This is just crazy. And I'm pretty sure Shannon felt the same as well.
Yeah. Well, I'll tell you that my biggest red flag with all this was the fact that literally almost the very same day that there was a worldwide protest plan against 5G, with 200 countries signed up for this protest, that this news, dropped. They dropped the bomb with the COVID news, and it hit the airways in full force, completely dominated all other narratives. And I thought, well, that's a little strange, because it was just a little too convenient, especially the lockdowns that followed while, people were made to stay home and not go to school. And meanwhile, those empty schools were being installed with 5G, their wireless systems. So all that went ahead because they were given this essential worker pass while the rest of us were helpless. We weren't allowed to gather, meaning not allowed to protest. So all these things that had gained momentum, and a lot of lawsuits as well against the FCC, against wireless industry, were put to, screeched to a halt. Same with there were other like lawsuits against mortgages in the UK, like fraudulent mortgages in the banks. And so, it just was a little too convenient. And I personally hadn't investigated much into germ theory or anything prior to that. So at first I wasn't sure. I heard these rumors about bioweapons from Wuhan and everything. But then I thought, well, that's, that was also kind of a convenient thing. I felt like that was sort of meant as a trap for the truth seekers to fall into. And some of those videos seemed a bit faked and phony to me. So I just started looking more into germ theory and into like the fact that viruses don't even exist, so then I just we just went from there, started researching the corruption in the CDC, and Fauci and all these players. And so when you start following, not only the money, but just the politics and the corruption, and you see who the players are, like Gates, and and we already knew a lot about Gates and his experiments in, with vaccines and harming, killing hundreds of thousands of children in third world nations, and that kind of thing.
Right. Like he already had a history even before this whole COVID element started. I mean, and he goes way back. You have a whole section on him, Gates of Hell. And I read that with great interest. I learned a lot of names, but he really had his hands in a lot of different things, right?
Yeah. Gates. Yeah, absolutely. He and Fauci, he and Fauci actually worked together. People don't realize that they had this kind of like, friendship or bromance or whatever you want to call it, long before this. And, so they really were working together, and, you see these connections, and, they had, done vaccine, so-called research together, meaning drug trials on children, orphan children in the foster care system often. A lot of these have been shut down since due to controversy, but I mean, a lot of these children were literally, they were killed. It was just mostly with the AIDS research, AIDS drugs, but also
that was in New York, right? In New York City.
Yeah, one of them was there. They were in several states, but there was a prominent one in New York, and that was I'm spacing on the name right now. I know the cemetery there was called like Gate of Heaven or something. And they found a mass grave. There's actually a BBC documentary called Guinea Pig Kids. A lot of this information comes from, and also, you may be aware of Robert Kennedy's book, The Real Dr. Fauci, or Real Anthony Fauci, which I've read most of. He doesn't really get into debunking germ theory, which is like my one criticism about that. But he does expose these horrific experiments. I mean, they were forcing. If a child refused the medications, these weren't sick children either for the most part. They may have tested so-called positive for AIDS or something like that, but not necessarily sick. They were force feeding them. So if the child refused, they would actually surgically insert feeding tubes into their intestines. That's what kind of things they were doing to these children.
Sick. Yeah, and he got away with it. Fauci, you said, was in this whole world for 50 years. He was part of an intelligence subset right now. Can you talk about that?
Yeah.
There's John. Do you want to talk about it, or sorry?
No, you go ahead. No, it's okay. I'll chip in a minute.
This is the part I researched, so it does, to be fair. So, I probably can speak up more quickly. But so the CDC, a lot of people don't realize this, but they have their own intelligence agency. It's unbelievable, that they have this for the sole express purpose of finding and creating pandemics. So they've actually trained. So Fauci, every general surgeon from I forget what years to what years, Dr. Robert Gallo, who so-called discovered, AIDS virus, even though he, discovered it a year after Luc Montagnier in France, but they were, anyway, that's a whole other story. But I mean, the HIV doesn't exist either, and they didn't actually find anything that you could call a virus. But,
didn't they ask, you said in the book, somebody asked Fauci to show the virus. He couldn't do it. He dodged it, right?
Right. None of them have. Nobody to date, this is incredible sounding, but nobody has proven a virus to exist, except for maybe Dr. Stefan Lanka in terms of sea allergy. He found viruses in sea allergy, real viruses that he could photograph, identify, and they were found to be not only benign, but seemed to be beneficial for the allergy. Not ever found in other plants or humans or animals. So what they call viruses are particles. They see genetic material, assume it to be part of a larger genome, but they've never seen the genome. They only do these sequencing and they do these computer models. And what we see when we see so-called photographs of viruses are actually computer models. So they're not photographs of viruses. Nobody has photographed a virus again, except for Dr. Stefan Lanka, who's been doing a lot of work also to expose this. He's, and I don't know, I don't want to get into kind of sidetracking a lot here, but the point is that they've never actually identified these in the way that you're supposed to. It's all kind of conjecture, really. These are theories. So they're basing all these policies, all the lockdowns, everything is based on a theory. It's a belief. Science today is like a religion. So this is all belief based, right?
Yeah.
And
so Fauci is almost like a priest, like a false priesthood or something like that.
Yes.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
So
I just wanted to.
Sorry, go ahead.
Sorry,
yeah.
go on.
I'll get back to the Fauci.
I just wanted to go back to the Gates issue.
Yeah.
I was going to kind of chip in a bit there, but we sort of got past it. But I think it's worth mentioning that the fact that Gates comes from a long line of eugenicists. Okay, so that's very important to bear in mind whenever you consider anything that Bill Gates does or said. It comes from a eugenics background. His father was a very prominent, if not a founder member of the American eugenics movement. And of course, Bill feels exactly the same. I'm sure many people have heard of the TED talk that he gave in 2015, where he actually said the world population is headed up to about 9 billion. But if we do a really great job with vaccines and one or two other things he mentioned, we can reduce that by maybe 15-20%. So, is openly talking about the vaccines being used as a population reduction agent. And the other thing about Gates is the fact that the vaccine model that he uses is exactly the same business model as his computer company, Microsoft. It's the constant renewal. It's not a one-off purchase. If you buy a Microsoft product, you buy it on license, and it's repeat business. It's constant repeat business, and this is exactly the same way it works the vaccine scam as well. So, he gets the WHO, of which he is a very serious influencer of, to follow his mandates for more and more vaccines, and COVID obviously was no exception to that.
Right. So he was paying off all these people. He was financing the WHO. That's what people think, that it's some kind of independent World Health. It's totally corrupt. I mean, it's corrupted by Gates, the Gates Foundation. And I mean, he goes back to the Rockefeller Foundation. Dad was a founding member of Planned Parenthood, which is full on eugenicist, crazy stuff. So, so Gates has a very sketchy background, but he also makes money in these things, right? So his investments are timed and structured so that he can make money off of the whole vaccine scam and this pandemic plan.
Exactly. And as I said, it's absolutely massive repeat business for him, in much the same way as the Microsoft products were.
Right. And I mean, it's just incredible that this whole thing happened, that he's funding Fauci, Birx, and Tedros, but it's never disclosed on the TV, right?
No, and but I wanted to just finish my thought about the intelligence service that the CDC has. So this is they used to release the list, members of this services on to the public. They stopped because people found out that Fauci and Gallo were and all the general surgeons had been trained by them. So these people started their careers at the CDC, trained by their intelligence agency. Then they found, then they kind of got them prominent positions as like health authorities of some kind, and so Fauci, of course, their allegiance is still to the CDC. And the whole point of their jobs elsewhere is to make the CDC money and keep them relevant. The CDC can't stay in business if they don't find epidemics and pandemics. If they can't continually cry pandemic, they'll be shut down. And so they also, many of the board members, of course, have investments in vaccines, and so they're actually allowed to decide what goes on the vaccine schedule every year for children. And many of them own patents to vaccines. I mean, no conflict of interest there, It's like, it's amazing.
Incredible.
Yeah.
It's so cool.
I mean, the CDC,
the
CDC was on the verge of being shut down by Reagan in the 80s. And then they found, what was the pandemic that they found? Or the epidemic, Shannon? AIDS, that was it, of course, yeah. And it was AIDS that actually saved CDC. So what does that tell us?
Yeah, and that was Fauci's like baby as well. He said he was like born. At some point he was quoted for saying he was born for this. That's what. It was.
So he has incredible experience on managing these pandemics.
Yeah.
Like, it's incredible. This is not somebody like a first timer. This is somebody who's been through the process. What was the old one? The swine flu.
Yeah.
All those like rolling, scare factors or whatever. This is kind
bird
of like
flu, swine flu.
Yeah.
I mean, those were all tests, and with each time they learn something new. How can they make even more money? How can they get more people on board with mandated vaccines? I've said they've been really successful this time around. Even though they never officially mandated it in our country, there's a vaccine apartheid going on. You can't get a job in many cases. You can't go to a concert. You can't go to a festival. You can't go to a movie theater. I mean, it's an apartheid. It's complete discrimination, and this has to be stopped. It's just going to keep going from here, because as we know, people, if to be so-called fully vaccinated, now you need so many boosters.
Right.
It's not ending. Yeah. It will never stop. And there's always monkeypox, please. Even the name is just ridiculous.
You've got to hold your hands up and say it's a great business model, don't you?
That's amazing.
You do, but you have to rely on the credulity of the people. You have to keep lying to them. Exactly. Because remember, fully vaccinated was just 2 shots, and they lied. I mean, the thing is they're on record lying blatantly. Once you're fully vaccinated, everything will be fine. We just have to get through this. You need a booster. CDC just came out within the last 2 weeks and said all of the shots are transient in their effects. And then we're not even like, your book doesn't talk about this whole tsunami of injuries that's really happening worldwide.
No, we didn't have a chance to at that point. Yeah,
I mean, that's a whole nother book.
It is. You could do a whole book on what, I mean, there was a great meme somebody passed around recently saying, oh, we did it. We did such a great job with COVID. And then it has all these percentages of like, the increase in all these different diseases and things since then. Actually, let me pull it up in a second. It's pretty good. It says, let's see, it's just almost opening.
Well, no, it's interesting you say that because it goes back to Fauci, because you write in your book,
right.
Fauci really didn't heal the people of the United States over time. The life expectancy has dropped 2 years, and just there's chronic illnesses everywhere.
Right.
Like these
right.
people have chronic illnesses that they need pharma for. I mean, it's off the charts. I mean,
the real epidemics are of obesity, of autism, of diabetes, of cancer, and all of these things are caused. We can prove by vaccines, at least in part, also by these EMF exposures. Oh, here it is. It says we did it. We finally beat COVID, and then it says 279% spike in miscarriages, 487% spike in breast cancer, 551% spike in Guillain-Barré syndrome, 269 spike in myocardial infarction, 468 spike in pulmonary embolism, 291 spike in Bell's palsy. Anyway, it goes on.
My favorite is the one where they have the efficacy going from 100% efficacy, 79% efficacy, 50% efficacy, 25% efficacy. You've got AIDS.
Let me just add another stat into that, Shannon, if I may.
Yeah,
and that is, I found this out only this week. Someone sent me a link to a British government website, which is called ONS, the Office of National Statistics. And on the Office of National Statistics website, it says, in no uncertain terms, that this is a government website, just let me remind you, that 1 in 250 people who've had the vaccine are now dead.
Wow. Yeah.
1 in 250 are now dead. And that doesn't even take into account, what's going to happen over the next few years. Obviously, that's going to increase dramatically, I would suspect.
I would agree with that.
And thanks to, programming people into accepting mandated vaccines for everything and increasing that, they have all these different ones in the works. I mean, they already planned, like last year, they said, okay, we're going to do like a multi shot, RNA shot for, we don't know what yet, but we're developing it. I mean, come on, it's just like, how can you develop a drug for something you don't already, when you don't even know what it is you're developing it for?
It's incredible. And then they haven't tested this stuff. They haven't tested these vaccines about multiple doses, and they're giving multiple doses out.
Yes. In fact, a friend of mine's son just went into the military, and she sent a list of how many vaccines he had to have at once, including the COVID shots, like 12 vaccines at one time. I'm surprised he's alive. I mean, a lot of them don't survive that.
It's madness.
Combo vaccines have never been tested.
It's madness. It's total madness, and they don't know what's in the vaccine. That's never been disclosed. Right. If it's just water and like some broken up piece of DNA, I would take 50,000 of those.
Right.
But that's not the case. There's other elements in there. This is not informed consent. You may consent to the shot, but you cannot have proper informed consent without knowing what you're putting in your body.
Well, especially when you're not allowed, they don't disclose they don't have to disclose nanoparticles. And that's why the graphene oxide, isn't disclosed, even though, a lot of these have been shown to have like 90% graphene oxide in them, which is highly poisonous and highly.
Just seen the comment on the screen there. It killed my brother-in-law's friend within hours, March 2021.
Wow.
That's absolutely
appalling. So sorry.
I mean, he's not alone, obviously, but, sorry to hear that.
Yeah.
Yeah, and there's just horror stories all over the world. Like people are very sick. They're not dead, so the stats are different. Like how sick are you? And the government isn't following. And people are starting to get payouts. I believe payouts are starting to be paid in Australia for vaccine injuries. So it's incredible. I mean,
well, a lot of the deaths weren't covered, haven't been covered under insurance, or they won't be. They're considered suicide. There was that case in France that ruled suicide because these people, the person who died willingly took this experimental drug.
Right,
and so nobody else is liable.
Yeah, we covered that in the book, don't we? About the guy in France. Yeah, I'm not sure that's just one of many similar stories.
Right. Yeah, there's a lot of stories. Yeah, and it's just really sick. Like all that stuff about how arrogant Fauci was. I just saw him on TV the other day talking how great he was and how wonderful. He's a grim. You call him the Grim Reaper. He's a Grim Reaper.
Oh, yeah.
He's worse than the Nazis. He's worse than Mengele. I believe that. That's a bold statement.
And what do you think about him stepping down right now? I haven't read a lot about this yet, but I think it's interesting because a lot of these criminals, really, war criminals, are stepping down, resigning. I mean, are they afraid of something coming? I mean, a lot of this is coming out about them. Are they trying to defer a trial? Or I'm just curious what you guys think about that.
Well, Q would tell you that it's all planned and that it's all orchestrated, but I'm not sure I buy into that. Anyway, that's another topic altogether. But yeah, I mean, there are a lot of.
They're all changing their stories. They've all changed. So something has happened. Yeah. There's been a change. Birx has said, "Oh, we knew the vaccine wouldn't be very effective," which is a shocking statement. Walensky has changed. There's been a lead change at the NIH. So she's either on the way out or there's been a leadership change. She's admitted mistakes were made, which is very strange. Like, why are you making a mistake when you forced everybody to do this? Yeah. And Fauci's on the way out. So I think there's something going to happen. They all should be very nervous. I would be super nervous.
There's definitely a lot of backtracking going on, for sure.
Yeah.
Well, Hancock stepped down in the UK, the health after this came out about the Myzadin murders.
Midazolam.
Midazolam,
which is the same as similar to the American one. Is it Recipe or
Remdesivir?
Remember what it's called. Remdesivir, that's it. Yeah, it's similar to that. Well, there was actually a court case, but it never came to fruition, of course, in the UK last year, and it was taking Hancock, who was the health secretary at the time, and one of his and a few of his co-conspirators, shall we say, to court, and they spent well over a year, and they built up a massive amount of evidence that absolutely proves beyond any question at all that the British government deliberately murdered 136,000 elderly people in care homes using a drug called midazolam.
That's incredible.
Yeah, I just want to make a correction too. It's actually not the same as that drug.
Is it not? Okay.
It's the same as the lethal.
So it's the same effect.
Drug. No, that doesn't have the same. Well, let me just explain. The lethal injection drug is what you mean. Is what is the same as. It's like what we use for death row patients here. For lethal injection. The other one is the drug that Fauci was recommending for treating COVID, which is supposedly like an antiviral or something, which is really dangerous. And a lot of people probably have died from it, but it's not expressly used, at least openly to kill people.
Well,
and actually it was called, the joke was that the nurses were actually seeing so many people die from it when people were being treated with COVID in hospitals with this. They were calling it "Run, Death is Near."
That's right. Yeah, that's what
I know. Two people. I have two friends whose relatives died after the application of remdesivir.
Oh wow!
Two separate cases. Yeah, Alex Stein and I can't remember his name. The other guy's name.
Yeah, it was actually people in the U.S. medical profession that were whistleblowers that were calling it "Run, Death is Near," weren't they?
Yes, exactly. The nurses.
So they knew exactly what was going on.
Yeah, 54% of trial patients died after taking remdesivir. And I think that was also financed by Gates. So Gates is behind all this stuff. That's his drug, which is why Fauci probably promoted it. I mean, it's just another thing. Fauci with AZT, all this stuff. It's so sick. So sick. And then for him to say attacks on me are attacks on science. Like, that's just a totalistic, crazy stuff.
Hey, I'll admit to attacking what they call science today. I don't have a problem with that.
Yeah, it's just a religion, isn't it? Nothing more, nothing less.
And his lackey Hotez is on the Joe Rogan Experience. Like, he's been around. He's being on TV all the time, and he's just another one of these pro-shot types. Oh, how can you even question the efficacy of these vaccines? What should really scare people? I mean, this is a different thing, but I think that in this rollout of COVID, they knew which batches were more deadly than others. So certain people got different batches. And what should scare the living daylights out of everybody on Earth is that don't assume that was the first time they pulled that stunt with the COVID.
No.
Badges. What if
And not just that, some were admittedly placebos. They said that they were placebos because it was part of a trial. It was still a trial period. I met somebody who was having to take this for her as a teacher, and she didn't want to take it. And she was sent an email that said, "You may have gotten a placebo. We can't tell you if you did or not," but they said half of those teachers at that school got placebos with that first round. Yeah.
Wow, that's incredible. So I mean, it's just the inconsistency of the logic is just off the charts. It doesn't make any sense.
Yeah, we need to vaccinate everybody, but half of you might have placebos. So the people with placebos are just as welcome into to travel and whatever, and consider to be vaccinated. It's incredible.
It's just illogical, totally illogical, isn't it?
Yeah, it's off the charts.
Everything. I mean, I think we do even though I say it myself, we do a pretty good job of dissecting the whole of the background to what's been going on the last two plus years in the book, and we cover just about every possible aspect that you can think of.
You really do, and you go back into kind of the beginning, the predictive program. You go into a lot of films, and also these two events, Event 201, and one I didn't hear of, which is Clade X.
Clade X.
Can you talk about that?
John, you want to talk about that?
Yeah, Clade X was a precursor to Event 201. Clade X was and there's not an awful lot to say about it. It was just another in a long line of exercises when there's any kind of false flag event going on. Clade X was, I think it was early 2018 when they did this, and as I say, it was just a precursor to Event 201, which is obviously a precursor to the actual pandemic itself. And again, you tick all the boxes, check all the boxes, the same kind of things going on, everything that kind of got discussed and mooted in a sense in that exercise, eventually came to happen in the actual pandemic. So yeah, I mean, there's not an awful lot to say about it other than that. I mean, it and Event 201 were the two kind of precursors to what's been going on the last 2 and a bit years.
Yeah.
Right. I don't know if you can add anything to that, Shannon.
Yeah. Gates was quoted. Sorry, there's some feedback. Hold on. Yeah, so Gates was quoted as saying that we didn't plan this, we didn't simulate it right after they simulated it, a few months after. Amazing.
Yeah, I said it on the BBC actually. I heard him say it on the BBC. Yeah.
And it's all the same usual suspects, right? WEF, Schwab, and these papers of Schwab you had listed in your books. These papers Schwab had been writing, so they were gaming this whole system, and they actually wrote this is fascism. It's a new word they use as partnerships instead of fascism. But governments will need to partner with traditional and social media companies to research and develop nimble approaches to countering misinformation. Wow.
Yeah. Censorship.
Yeah.
I mean, that censorship right there. I mean, I know there's all this talk that's sort of like we're partnering we're all cooperating, we're all helping each other. Isn't it great, this worldwide cooperative response? No, it's not great. It's not great for us at all. It's very alarming. We shouldn't be happy when private industry is coupled with government. I mean, when they're working together, it's not usually good for us.
And a lot of that isn't even working together. I think you wrote in your book, Event 201 explicitly called for the corporate control of government. So it's not, the government isn't really your government. It's just it's like rollerball or something, like some dystopia.
Right, because that's why you have to look at who's benefiting. And when you see that big tech and big pharma are making billions and trillions of dollars off of this crisis, and then obviously they planned, and we know they planned it, and they're paying these politicians, they're paying these officials, they're working together, like you said, because they're being paid to do so.
Well, what a lot of people don't realize is that the WHO is the de facto one world government. They are allowed to decide whenever they see fit what constitutes a pandemic, and obviously they've recently changed the definition of a pandemic as well to say that it's not about numbers of deaths, it's about number of cases. Originally, a pandemic was intrinsically connected with the amount of deaths. But the WHO have kindly redefined that now, so it's number of cases, which is very convenient knowing what we know about the so-called COVID pandemic. But what the point I was coming on to make was that the WHO, if it declares a pandemic, it immediately takes precedence over all nations' governments. It becomes the de facto one world government. So it's easy to see that this is where we're going. There are going to be more pandemics in the pipeline, I'm absolutely sure. And we're already hearing murmurings about stuff like monkeypox and, which is another load of nonsense. And, I heard something today and it's gone from my mind. I can't remember what it was called, but they were saying this is another potential pandemic. So they're constantly hammering us with all these, tidbits of these sound bites of nonsense that are preparing the way, for the future for us. So, if we do hit this point where the WHO declared it a pandemic, they are in effect the world government from that point onwards.
It's incredible.
Right. Well, and they had this whole thing happening. Wait for the feedback to stop. Yeah, they had this whole thing happening in the spring where was that meeting? They were trying to have all the UN nations sign the agreement with the WHO to allow them to take over their governments and in the event of a health emergency. I mean, you're saying, John, that they automatically do that, but they're obviously they can't do it completely, and this is why they want this agreement signed. And luckily, it didn't go through, and they're going to keep trying for it, though. Can you say more about? I forget what that agreement was called. Do you remember?
Not off the top of my head, no.
Okay.
I remember seeing that, though. I don't recall what it was called, but people objected to it for the reason just what John said, like it was. And this is all just about sovereignty over the body, over your political class. This is a different type of warfare. It's not like the standard, one-dimensional warfare. This is like top-down lies, and you include in your book a lot of, I think, important elements that there is mind control and social engineering going on.
Yes.
Do one of you two want to address that?
Yeah, I could. I researched the mind control a lot, and so basically, and in the U.S. anyway, our governments have been thoroughly involved in this research from at least the 40s, let's say. And especially using radio frequencies, interestingly. So, there's been foreknowledge of the harm of radio frequencies, the mind control aspect for decades. So to me, when, this is released and onto the public as a so-called, communications, reasons or whatever, as a convenience and with full knowledge of the harmful impacts, then that is intentional. So to me, it's criminal, because they have intent to harm if they have foreknowledge, and they do have foreknowledge. But the point is that these frequencies can be used for mind control. And there was Dr. Jose Delgado had done experiments with remote controlling a bull. He showed an audience, he wowed an audience by stopping a bull in its tracks that was charging him, because he had electrodes on the bull's head, and he had a little, remote control in his hand. He was able to stop the bull and turn it around. Right.
There's actually a video of that. There's a video of that. Yeah.
And he's done this with monkeys. He can not only can he calm animals with this technology, and this was, I think, in the early 60s, he could actually also make them aggressive. It might not have been him. There was another researcher that maybe was doing that. But the point is that it's, the mood control potential is definitely there. And he was advocating for what he called the psycho-civilized citizen, psycho-civilized man, meaning that it would be best for society if man is mind controlled, like openly talking about this, writing books about it, and this, to me, this is just the continuation of this. It's more sophisticated now, but it's all about so-called psycho-civilizing us.
Well, we know there are patents out there on the internet for both mind control and physical control of humans as well. There are patents out there. So, I mean, we're going to go into a lot more details on this in the follow-up to this book. I mean, there will be a follow-up.
Yeah.
We haven't started it yet, but it's in the planning stages. So, yeah, I mean, the ultimate end goal, which is the question that I'm most commonly asked to all this, what is the ultimate end goal? The ultimate end goal is transhumanism and a reduction of the population to about 95% less than we have now. And they think they're well on the way. I'm not so sure, but
this is a start. Who knows how many people are going to pass away from what the shots they've taken.
Absolutely.
I don't really know.
I mean,
there was, like you mentioned in your book, the Georgia Guidestones. Those were, somebody took those down. That's pretty incredible.
Yeah.
So
that's interesting. That happened after we got the book out. Yeah, they were blown up or something, and still don't know who did it or anything about that. But I think there were some interesting numbers involved in terms of the dates and everything that seemed to point to something esoteric involved. And I don't remember what that is right now, but
I can tell you it's esoteric because it's a huge monolith. That's what these guys love, the monolith.
Yeah.
You can go through 2001, all this stuff. Yeah, really fascinating. And I mean, there's hypnosis or some this mass formation psychosis. They were able to do the standard kind of MK Ultra things on people by keeping them isolated.
Yes,
that was really actually a very clever mind control element, is isolate everybody from everybody else.
Yeah, isolation actually is what the other thing I wanted to mention was the key to breaking people, to breaking them down and then sort of recreating them from there. They found with these mind control experiments as far back as like the 50s was isolation. Isolation combined with sensory deprivation, they found that they could break anybody.
They're still using that today. They're still using that today on these poor kind of Middle Eastern Gitmo people. A lot of those guys were innocent too. They made them into terrorists. I did a whole show on that.
Oh wow. Yeah, they also put masks on them long before, not with the idea of germs or anything. Like they put masks on them because it's dehumanizing.
They're using MK Ultra techniques. They are using MK Ultra techniques that they learned in the 50s today.
Yes.
Gitmo and all over the place. So, but I mean, I think that they did something very clever, something that they figured out when they planned this whole event to really isolate people and get them all freaked out through the TV. Like they did. It was really, I never expected this. Like it was incredible. Do you guys have time for a few questions? I got to wrap it up really in about 10 minutes. SB asked, okay, great. SB asked, what are their predictions for the rest of the year? Any more lockdowns, monkeypox business?
Well, it's difficult to say. I couldn't put my hand on my heart and say I know exactly what's going to go on, but I'm sure they are going to edge, at the very least, they're going to edge towards the next step in this, whatever that might be. And to be quite honest, I don't have a clue what that could be. But I do know one thing, and that is that I think we beat them on COVID. Okay, I think they had to abandon that way before time, because all the predictions were from things like the Rockefeller Lockstep document, which some people out there might be aware of, were that it was going to last for 5 years. Well, it only lasted 2, and now we're seeing the whole thing being dismantled in various different ways. So I think that's a positive. But yeah, I'm sorry, I'm not answering the question very well, but I don't know the answer to that, and I don't think anyone does other than insiders, to be fair.
I would be more, sorry, here it goes again. I'd be more inclined to think that that we'll get into some kind of climate lockdowns at some point, climate change, like we need to curtail movement because of the climate. They're really pushing that agenda, with every time it's a hot day or whatever, it's just like all over the news that, climate change. And it's really, that's something that we really need to be discussing more, because people are really indoctrinated with that idea, even sometimes when they're on our side about other things, they kind of can't see past
really
this.
pushing that.
But I have to say the monkeypox too, they already, I don't know if you're aware of this, but they declared a state of emergency in the state I'm in already. The governor did this about it recently, and I don't know what that effect that's going to have. I feel like there'll be a resistance to, I feel like they're going to be hesitant to pull the lockdown card again, and that there would be more of a resistance to it because people are really worn out with that. And I think in a way they got what they wanted in terms of behavior modification and people going along with the vaccine agenda. So I think I would more expect like a sort of creepy or more of a creep with this, that it's just going to keep pushing these things here and there and like, kind of relieving it in some cases, then bringing it back again. It's just to keep training us to normalize these things and maybe not do something as drastic. Although again, like John, I can't say for sure. I wouldn't be able to say for sure, but it's something we have to still be vigilant about. I mean, the problem is I think a lot of people just assume that once the COVID thing was taken care of, they wouldn't do this again. Oh, it's temporary. A lot of people were fine with like giving up liberties because they thought it was temporary. You should never give up liberties. Never,
2 weeks to flatten the curve, right? Isn't that going to be a famous line?
Yeah, they said that about World War II. It was going to be a few months. I mean, they say this all the time. Don't believe that. Never give up your liberties for any reason, for any length of time. You know, once you do, it's just that easy, much easier the next time. You know, they've set a standard. There's this line that they've drawn. They can always go back to that. You know, we've done it before. They did it before. And the problem is they have set this precedent. So in some ways it'd be easier to have lockdown. We did it before. Maybe we'll do it better this time. Maybe we learned from the last time. We didn't do it soon enough or long enough or whatever. And a lot of people could go along with that, though I think people are so weary as well. And they don't want to, maybe they won't be as willing to, they've seen what happened with their businesses and, you know, the economy. They might not be as willing to jump on that and go along with it. So hopefully not.
Yeah, it was a massive wealth transference. Like you mentioned in your book, it was a 7 trillion or 8 trillion swing, 4 trillion out of the hands of the people into the oligarchs' pockets. So they succeeded in that regard in a big way. Next question, which it ties into the title of the book, is from Slick Dissident. Is there info on the many undisclosed effects of masks in the book?
Yes.
Yeah,
definitely.
Absolutely. Go on, Shannon. You go
well, there's
for
a whole
this.
chapter on masks. We actually have a whole chapter on masks related to both the health effects and the psychological, you know, social engineering impacts. So yes, the hypoxia, you know, the deaths from wearing masks, people passing out, having accidents, children dying. You know, there's other thoughts about this, you know, possibly like, you know, fungi and bacteria and things like developing on the masks. There's graphene oxide in some of the masks. Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
Okay. And then another one, Tim asks, is there any way to prevent so much collusion between the CDC and Big Pharma?
Shut them down.
Shut them down. Yeah.
I don't know,
they said in unison.
Oh my gosh, I know. I mean, that's so hard because I don't even understand how they've gotten away with this long having these obvious conflict of interest. How, you know, how do you have people who have vaccine patents and things on the board for deciding what's on the vaccine schedule? It just, you know, it's just been going on this long, this crazily. I don't know. And I mean, people need to know that, first of all, I guess, and then maybe you could have some kind of reform. But personally, I'd be for shutting them down completely. Then we'll never have pandemics again after that.
Yeah, I mean, corruption is just endemic throughout society anyway. This is just one element of it, really, isn't it? It's a big element, but it is just one element of it.
Yeah,
it's almost like how do you get like Big Pharma out of government too? You know, same question.
Exactly. Yeah.
I mean,
it's money talks, isn't it?
Yeah, they're in the government, and you don't even see what's underneath the surface, under the under the table exchanges of money. You don't even see that. Above is bad enough.
Yeah,
but you know, who knows who gets financing from these guys? I mean, some of the stuff is really outrageous. Really great talk. Thanks so much, and thanks for writing this book. Where's the best place for people to get Welcome to the Masquerade?
Sadly, Amazon.
Yeah, I was just gonna say Amazon.
And then
sorry, go ahead.
Amazon, you have a Kindle version and a paperback copy.
Right.
Yeah. Yeah.
And then your websites, John, yours is falsificationofhistory.co.uk. Is that the best place to reach you if people have additional questions or anything?
Yeah, I mean, you can. I don't mind you giving my email address out if people want to contact me. It's jch120-752@gmail.com. Or you can contact me through my website also. On my website there are all the podcasts that I've done in the last 2, 3, 4 years, and there are hundreds of articles on there that I've written over the years as well. So it's there's quite a bunch of stuff on there, to say the least.
And Shannon, where's the best place for people to contact you?
Yeah, also on my website we mentioned earlier, wifi-refugee.com. You can email through there. You can also sign up for my email list. You can find articles and podcasts as well, as well as a link to my other book.
Right, and there's a lot more in this book. You guys go into the Depop agenda, vaccines, viruses, 5G, very important, graphene oxide. They're actually poisoning other things with graphene oxide.
That's right.
It's not just the vaccines. You can get it in pharmaceuticals, a lot of food, and that's a whole issue that unfortunately is really scary. I worked in the cell phone industry doing contracts. The cell phone contracts, there are so many indemnities and things that they have to do to get people to sign those contracts, you would never sign them. Like you give away the right to, the way they do it is bribe them to put the cell phone towers up or stuff on top of buildings. But for a 4G workman to go up there, they have to shut everything down and shut down all the electronics, or else that guy will be sterile in 15 minutes. I'm not kidding. Yeah, that's that's a huge issue in the cell phone industry. Everybody glosses over it. Anyway, that's a whole nother story.
Yeah.
But thank you so much, guys. Thanks. It's great to be with you again,
thank
John.
you. I really enjoyed it.
John Hamer and Shannon Rowan. Title of the book again is Welcome to the Masquerade, Prelude to the Coming Reset. Thanks so much.
Thank you.
Thanks, William.
All right.
Thank you very much.